Hi, today we're going to talk about how the oceans keep us safe. The world is obviously 70% water and 30% land, and the oceans have a big role to play in climate and how climate affects us. But we think of the oceans as something that connects the different continents, but also they separate continents and countries. And it's the separation that the oceans bring is of interest to me. If we look at history, the oceans have protected many countries to some extent. Australia during the Second World War, the Japanese, after the bombing of Darwin, still had not mounted an invasion because the logistics of it to some extent would involve bringing across troops across the ocean. Germany gobbled up, under Hitler, gobbled up all the European states. But one of the things after the defeat in the Battle of France and the evacuation of Dunkirk that saved England was that his millions of panzers, at least 1.3 million panzers, had no way of crossing the English Channel without a huge flotilla of ships, etc., which considerably delayed the invasions, the invasion of England in 1940. And whilst the Royal Air Force obviously subsequently played a stupendous part in beating back the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain, the fact remained that if in 1940, if England and mainland Europe was connected like it today is through the Channel Tunnel, who knows, history might have been different. England might have found it, and Great Britain might have found it very hard to push back an invasion by Hitler and his armies. So if we look at the world today, in many ways, I feel that the oceans protect us from hatred. The oceans protect us from massive armies which are under the command of countries which have no democratic rule. For example, China. For example, Russia. Now, for China, they have an army which is 4.3 million, I think, approximately a standing army. Now, if China was able to throw that army against other nations without the ocean separating us, then what would they have done till now? The oceans constrict them to some extent. Yes, they have a navy, but the oceans too constrict them. The same with Russia, that to what extent that the oceans constrain Putin from hurling his armies against countries that he doesn't like. He has already done it. If we see with Russia, where there are land borders, like with Ukraine, and with an inverted commas invasion, liberation of parts of southern of Ukraine, and what happened in Georgia, are all because there are land borders. Obviously, I mean, it sounds very obvious that most countries are connected on a continent by land borders, but that's where we should feel lucky if the oceans separate us from such powers, because ultimately crossing oceans remains one of the biggest challenges, even though ships go across oceans to transport food, oil, and everything that we need. That crossing oceans still is a challenge if you're wanting to cross a lot of main materials and equipment. And that protects us from autocracy, that in a way protects us from hatred that we never probably imagine or fathom. So I'd like to know what you think of this idea that the oceans have a big role to play in at certain points in history in preventing regimes who are autocratic or fascist from invading other countries or easily. So that's today's food for thought, and look forward to more of these in the future. Thank you.